Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti 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 Hari Om. Today's talk is on stages of equanimity. What is equanimity? And before starting, I would like to begin with actually a story. The story of Sukhdev, Rishi Sukhdev ji, and King Janak. So, who was Sukhdev? Sukhdev ji was the son of Veda Vyasa. Veda Vyas was the greatest rishi of his times, and he lived in the Badrik ashram in the Himalayas. He's very famous because he's the one who put together all the Vedas, and he's the one who wrote the Bhagavad Puran, the Mahabharat, the Gita, obviously, which is part of the Mahabharat. And his son, he had a son named Sukhdev. Now, Sukhdev ji had shown great spiritual advancement even as a child, even as a teenager. So once Rishi Vedvyas decided that I want to send my son to King Janak for more education, spiritual wisdom and knowledge. King Janak was known for his spiritual wisdom and knowledge. So when King Janak came to know that Rishi Vedvyas' son Sukhdev is coming to my court, so he made the right preparations for it. We'll come to know about the preparations. So when Sukhdev ji reached the palace, the guards, as they were instructed, did not pay any importance to him. Who is Sukhdev? What Rishi Vedvyas? We don't know anything. Come in, you can come into the court like everybody, and you can hear King Janak speak. For 3 days, nobody really recognized Vyas ji's son Sukhdev. He was like an ordinary, जैसे और लोग हैं वैसे. Sukhdev was hearing the sermons of King Janak. On the 4th day, the courtiers all of a sudden changed their policy. They started giving him a lot of importance. They moved him to a very lavish room. They gave him very lavish clothing and jewels and everything. And King Janak told two of his people to keep a close eye to watch Sukhdev ji, how he's behaving, what is happening. And the servants came and reported, "Oh King Janak, Sukhdev ji has remained calm and composed throughout the whole time. Through the whole 11 days, whether the first 3 days he was given no importance, or the next 8 days he was given so much importance and lavish clothes and jewelry and a room, he remained as he was, in a somehow." Then King Janak said, "Okay, tell Sukhdev that I have called him to the court." And when Sukhdev ji came to the court, he saw that there were dancers and there were musicians and there were singers and there was a lot of hullabaloo in the court. And then King Janak told Sukhdev that I'm giving you this bowl of milk which is full to the brim, and you have to keep it on your head, and you have to take 7 rounds of the court. 7 rounds of the court, while the dancers will be dancing in between and the singers will be singing, etc. Sukhdev, as placid and calm as he always was, took the bowl and did the 7 rounds without spilling even a drop of the milk. And when the king finally saw Sukhdev finish this feat remarkably, he said, "My dear boy, I don't need to teach you anything. You do not feel insulted. You do not feel frustrated. You do not feel depressed. You do not feel very elated and exalted when people give you importance. You do not feel excited. You are always in a state of equanimity or samta. And this is the main quality that is needed to advance in spirituality. And you already have it. You have renounced mentally all your attachments, all your attractions, all your aversions. So he said, you do not need to study under me. And King Janak was correct indeed, because Sukdev became a great rishi even in his father's own time. In fact, he was the one who read out the Bhagavad Puran to King Parikshit, and Sukdev attained moksha in his father's own lifetime. Right? This is the story of equanimity that I wanted to share with you. So we are going to be talking on the stages of equanimity. The first slide after this. Equanimity or samatha is the capacity of receiving with a calm and equal mind all attacks of outward things like ill fortune, good fortune, हमारे साथ अच्छा हो या बुरा हो, हमें praise मिले या blame मिले. The mind is always in a calm and equipoise, calm equipoise. This is equanimity or samatha. Next, equanimity or samatha is also the capacity of receiving with a calm and equal mind all outer and inner physical stimulus. Even the physical stimulus, cold, heat, pain, disease, illness, and delight. All of this, the physical things that the physical experiences that we have, even we must have the capacity of receiving them with a calm and equal mind. Generally, people will say, oh, I can't bear the heat, while we are living in air-conditioned rooms. I don't understand this, right? This is not samatha. So, samatha, we all know that this is difficult to achieve, but isn't life just that? If people throw lemons at you, use them to make lemonade. And fortunately, we have within us the potentiality to become equanimous. That is a potentiality that we all have within us. Now I ask you a question. Do you think that Arjun was in a state of equanimity when he reached Kurukshetra for the war? Far from it. He was greatly disturbed. Arjun was so disturbed when he reached the battle. His nerves were all in a state of distress. And that is why there's so many things. I mean, Krishna got very angry on him. He said, you're suffering from Karpanya dosha, and many other names that he gave to him. He was greatly disturbed that I will be committing a sin by killing so many warriors. And he placed before Krishna so many seemingly moral arguments for not fighting. But this is the stage from which he had to be taken out. And through the Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna managed to bring him to a state of equanimity. Now, once the mother was asked that how do I come to know whether I am doing progress in my sadhana or not? And the mother said that the thermometer is there within you. If you are in a state of equanimity and आपके लिए सब कुछ सम है, तब आपकी साधना प्रोग्रेस कर रही है. Then you are making progress in your sadhana. But कभी गुस्सा आ रहा है, कभी किसी से प्रेम है, कभी किसी से गुस्सा है, कभी अच्छा है, कभी बुरा है. If I am not in a state of equanimity, then you are not. Somewhere in your sadhana you need to make an effort and grow. So once a sadhak asked the mother, what is the criterion to measure our progress in yoga? What is the criterion to measure the next one? What is the criterion to measure our progress in yoga? And the mother said, the extent to which you remain equal in all circumstances gives you the measure of your progress. The extent to which we have reached equanimity in our being, the extent to which we have reached samatha in our being, that is the way to measure our progress in yoga, in spirituality. Right? Now coming to what is equanimity. We have already discussed what is equanimity. Let us study the different stages of equanimity. Next, there are two forms of equanimity. There is the passive equanimity and there is the active equanimity. All this I have taken from Sri Aurobindo's Sapta Chatushtaya, if you all want to study it sometime later. So Sri Aurobindo says there are two forms of equanimity, passive equanimity and active equanimity. What is passive equanimity? Passive equanimity is how we receive things from the outer world. When the outer world gives us its attacks or pleasure or pain, how do we receive it? That, when we start becoming equanimous in that, that is called passive equanimity. And passive equanimity also has three stages. Then there is active equanimity. Active equanimity is how we react to the world. How do I respond to the attacks or to whatever is being doled out to me? My reaction with the outer world is the subject matter of active equanimity. Now, let us study the different stages of passive equanimity. Is everybody clear up to now? Okay. There are three stages of passive equanimity. The first stage is titiksha or endurance. When we, with an effort, we bear the difficult situations. Not only difficult situations, when we bear the happy situations. So titiksha or endurance is the first stage. The second stage is udasinata or indifference. And the third stage is nati or surrender of our soul to the will of God. Titiksha or endurance, udasinata or indifference, and the highest stage of passive equanimity is nati or surrender of the soul to the will of God. Let us now study the first stage of passive equanimity, which is titiksha or endurance. Titiksha or endurance is basically to be able to bear firmly all stimulus, pleasant or unpleasant, and not be overpowered by that which is painful, not getting carried away by the pleasant, to be able to receive calmly and firmly the pleasant and the painful and bear it with a much stronger and greater attitude than the attack itself. Suppose the attack is of some great news. It's a fantastic news. For instance, my daughter has got into IIM. But to be able to bear that joy with a to be able to bear it, endure it, and not be tom-tomming, just calmly, as Gita has done. This bearing of all stimulus is titiksha or endurance. Sometimes one tries to reach equanimity or samatha by developing this power to endure. For example, when we were in school, if we have stood first in our class and we feel very, very happy, but my friend has also secured first position in his section, but it makes no difference to me. It doesn't make any difference in my consciousness. Why? Because I am attached only to my progress. I have progress, I am feeling very happy. He has progress, it matters not. Now, if I start cultivating endurance, if I start cultivating titiksha, then I say to myself that although I have secured in my class first position, and normally my state of consciousness should be that I should be very exalted, I quiet down my exaltation. I don't allow the ripples of my exaltation to bubble up, not bubbling and dancing all over the place. This is developing endurance, the state of endurance. You endure your exaltation, and you do not jump all over, all around, and do not express it. You bear that happiness, you bear that pleasantness without throwing big parties and so on. You just bear it, you contain it within yourself, and you don't burst out. This is endurance. Now, this is for happiness. Similarly, there could be a situation where I have received a lot of pain. Say, when you don't get the kind of marks that you wanted, you had worked very hard and you felt you had answered the paper beautifully, but marks nahi mile. You didn't get the kind of marks that you expected. Or you worked very hard for your daughter or your son, and the son or your daughter or your husband doesn't recognize the effort that you're doing, and you're making a great effort. Then it could lead to, generally speaking, disappointment, frustration, depression, that I'm not even being recognized. मैं इतनी effort कर रही हूँ, and I'm not being recognized. But if one is following the path of endurance or titiksha, then one doesn't allow these negative emotions to overpower us. This is endurance. This is titiksha. You endure the suffering without allowing your emotions to rise up. And even if they arise, you make those emotions weaker and weaker by not responding to them. I will not give any place in my consciousness to this emotion of depression and frustration or sadness or extra happiness. For example, suppose you are given an honor in the country and thousands of people in the nation are going to voice their praise of you on television. Normally, it would lead to a great amount of exultation. But if you're following the method of titiksha or endurance, you don't feel that exultation. You are able to hold out that emotion of greatness, that I am so great, I'm going to be honored by people, by an effort. You are not overpowered. But let me tell you one thing about titiksha or endurance. That titiksha or the power to endure is not something permanent. You can endure something with a great effort, but the effort will not continue all the time. In short, whenever you hold out a certain emotion, the emotion is inside you, you have overpowered it, but it is not necessary that this kind of overpowering the emotion by the effort of endurance can continue for very long. So, what is the next stage of equanimity, passive equanimity? The second stage of passive equanimity is udasinata or indifference. So when we have endured and endured, bear kar liya koi cheez ko, we have borne that thing, we have been able to bear it and bear it, sometimes it can lead to the hardness of indifference. Then one can become indifferent. I have done so much for her. How much I keep doing for her. But she doesn't love me. She doesn't care for me. So I become indifferent to her. Jaye jaise jaise hai, rehne do. I can't do anymore. I become indifferent. This is what udasinata or indifference may lead to. Udasinata comes from two words. Ud, asin. Asin is seated. Ud is above. Seated, above. So udasin is to become indifferent to the dualities of the outer world, becoming free from desire, free from the touch of joy and grief, pleasure and pain, liking and disliking. So if I am honored or not, although I feel happy, I minimize the happiness by an effort. And the result becomes becoming udasin, becoming indifferent. I don't care. It doesn't matter if I am honored. I am going to rise above that feeling of joy. And when one starts becoming udasin or indifferent, one feels. It's not that one doesn't feel pleasure and pain, but one realizes that the pleasure and the pain are being felt by the mind, or the pleasure and the pain are being felt by my emotions. My emotion is rising, my emotion is feeling, my prana is feeling, or the pain is being felt by my body. But I am seated above it. In this movement of indifference, there are many levels. One very low level is when one becomes hard. One becomes hard or indifferent to the person with whom one has a problem. I don't care what happens to that person because I am becoming indifferent to that person. This is one of the pitfalls where one can fall when one follows the path of udasinata or indifference. Because while detaching oneself from somebody, not knowing how to detach oneself properly, one may become hard towards that person or object. And then whatever happens to that person or object, I don't care. This is one of the pitfalls of udasinata or indifference. Another trait that indifference can lead to is pride. Even when I am honored, it doesn't make a difference to me. Although I stood first in my class, it made no difference to me. हमें तो कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ा. I have reached a high level of yoga. This pride is going to bring us down. So basically, it is not indifference at all. One has become indifferent that I came first in class, but one has become proud that I am indifferent. So these are the two pitfalls of udasinata or indifference. Some cruel men are very indifferent. Whether some people are undergoing great strain or torture, it makes no difference to them. But becoming cruel or becoming proud, these are perversions. In the name of indifference, in the name of detachment, when we follow udasinata or indifference, we may fall into this kind of a pit. So one has to guard against it. That instead of becoming much more divine, I do not become hard, I do not become proud, I do not become cruel. And this needs to be told to people who are following this path, that it is possible to be indifferent and yet be gentle, yet be loving, yet be equal. Indifference and udasinta do not necessarily lead to pride and cruelty. They may lead to pride and cruelty. However, we must remember that endurance or titiksha and indifference or udasinata both are reached by a great amount of effort. But a great effort cannot last all the time. It is not possible to last all the time. Effort, as long as it is an effort, is always temporary. It is not jala kamalavat. Effort is not the natural state of being. See, there is this lotus and there is the lotus leaf. And when water comes on the lotus leaf, it still does not make the leaf wet. Why? Because the nature of the leaf is that it can let the water come and go and not become wet. This has become the nature. So by an effort we can reach somewhere, but it will not be permanent. Our very nature has to change. So endurance and indifference will not bring us to this result. They can be a stage in our development, but they cannot be our real goal. See, our ego is the big problem. Our ego places us in the center. Actually, we are all in a corner. If you see philosophically, largely you will find that we are all in a corner. Actually, every individual is in a corner in the world. Anybody thinking that I am in the center is having a wrong perception. None of us are in the center. Even if I am honored by television, in which I am the central hero, 1,000 people may be voicing their praises. But when we look at the whole universe, when we look at all the sounds of the universe, the chorus of sounds going on in the universe, the universal rhythm, what is the voice of thousands of people. It is nothing. It is just like a cracker, like a little burst. It doesn't matter. If you look at the whole universe, you find that everything in the world is in a corner. Everything. It is only in the center from a certain point of view. For instance, I am sitting here and talking to you. Now, when I am talking to you, I seem to be in the center. But when I see it from my perspective, I am in the corner and my talk has meaning only because there is you. So for me, you are in the center. Actually speaking, nobody is in the center. All of us are in the corner. And when we have this wide intellectual perception of things and realize that you are always in the corner, then this detachment and indifference will come to us automatically. Then we will not have to make that great effort. Now the question that arises is, if I'm in the corner, you are in the corner, everybody is in the corner, then who is in the center of the universe? So Gita chapter 7 verse 19, Vasudeva sarvam iti sa mahatma sudurlabha. Very rare is the great soul who knows that Vasudeva, the omnipresent being, is all that is. Very rare. Even the Gita says that it is rare, but it doesn't mean it is not possible. To know and to realize that the divine Vasudeva, or by whichever name you want to call the divine, Vasudeva, Christ, Allah, call him what you want. That omnipresent being is all that is. Now this brings us to the third stage of equanimity. Slide. Third stage of passive equanimity is the most beautiful and the most important stage, nati, or submission of the soul to the will of God. The Supreme Divine is in the center and all has to be offered to him. See, a still higher sense of samatvam arises when your inner sense of resignation, where you perceive that there is a reality, God himself, who is in the center of the universe. What is nati? Nati is the acceptance of all touches as his touches, all experience as his play with the soul of man. He is playing with my soul. Whatever is happening in this world to me, whoever is treating me in whatever manner, whatever circumstances happen in life, they are all God's play with me. They are all his touches. Nati, this nati that we do can be with endurance or titiksha. When we submit to the will of God with endurance, then we feel the sorrow, but we accept the sorrow as his will. It is God's will that I am accepting. So, nati and endurance have joined together. I am accepting all this and I am going to endure the pain because it is a gift of God. Nati or submission can be with indifference or udasinata, where that is rising beyond, regarding joy and sorrow as God's working in our lower instruments. In both endurance and that is in titiksha or endurance and in udasinata or indifference, we can use the process of nati. Nati or submission to the divine's will can be with great ananda, receiving everything as a play of God and therefore in itself delightful. This submission is the highest state of a yogi, because then one is in a continuous state of namaskar to God, pranam to God. This is not mine, that is not mine, it is all yours. O Lord, all is yours. The pain is yours, the praise is yours, the blame is yours, the joy is yours, the sorrow is yours, and everything we remember the divine and we say, Idam Namama. This is not mine. This belongs to you, O Lord. Idam Namama. Idam Namama. Idam Namama. This is not mine. This belongs to you, O Lord. Whatever experience you have, you just offer it to the divine and you say, Idam Namama. This is not mine. This belongs to thee, O Lord. You offer it to the Lord truly and heartily with your whole being is in submission to the Lord. When this joyous namaskar of offering to God is constantly practiced, we arrive eventually at the entire elimination of grief and pain and all the dualities of life. We start finding joy in the most trivial, even the most discordant and difficult situations of life. We find a secret joy. In the most difficult situation, we find that secret joy which is of the divine prasada that has come to me through that situation. That situation may be very difficult. It may bring to the eyes some tears to begin with. But as soon as the mind immediately goes back that no, this is the divine's prasada for me, and I accept it as the divine's prasada, I submit to the will of the Lord, and I say, Idam Namama, this is all yours. Then you will not have a dry indifference, but a happy condition of indifference, a happy condition of udasinata, in which you resign everything to God. For example, again taking the same example, you may become victorious and you may have won a... Now just see, when we were little kids and we received a gold medal or we came first in class and we come back with our report card and we tell our mother, Ma, this is not mine, this belongs to you. You have kept up all night with me. You have woken me up in the morning and given me milk and made me study. You have taken me for those classes. You have put in so much effort. This medal is not mine, Ma, this is yours. And when we go and put it in her feet, offer it to our mother, how happy we used to feel then. Now we have to go to the parent of the world, the divine, and say, I offer it to you. This joy I offer to you. This sorrow I offer to you. Then there will be no dry equanimity. Then there will be joy. There will be joy in it. There will be the joy of giving, the joy of offering. Although there will be an indifference still, whether you win or you don't win, you are indifferent to it. But you are offering it. It is not yours. You don't attach your victory to yourself. You offer it to whom it really belongs. And that gives you joy. It's an indifference which is coupled with the joy of resignation, which is a much higher condition. It's clear up till now to everybody? In this state, all becomes an expression of supreme ananda. We may have to begin with titiksha or endurance. शुरुआत हमने तितिक्षा के साथ की, endurance के साथ की. Or we may have gone up to udasinata and become indifferent, that I've become indifferent to all that is happening. But it is this ananda which must fulfill our journey towards samatha. By the help of Buddhi Yoga, you may have separated yourself from your habitual mental and nervous reactions. Then, by an intellectual perception, you will have seen that all these outer experiences are actually being gathered by my soul, which is actually secretly Anandamay itself. So we started our journey by the help of Buddhi Yoga. We separated ourselves from our mental and nervous habitual reactions. By the Buddhi Yoga, we separated it. We used our Buddhi for it. Then by an intellectual perception, we will see that all these outer experiences that are happening to me, all these attacks or appearances of attack or whatever is happening to me, these are all experiences that are being gathered by my soul. And my soul is Anandamaya itself. Secretly, it is Anandamaya. Then the value that we give to the daily experiences changes. Abhi, what is the value we give? Oh, he is very mean. Oh, he is very cruel. Oh, he is very rude. This is the value we give to people or to things. Oh, this circumstance is very difficult. But when we reach this stage, where all becomes an expression of supreme Ananda, then all becomes a prasada from the divine. All becomes a prasada. What is amangala becomes mangalam. Defeat and failure become God's immediate purpose. That right now, God wants defeat for me. God wants failure for me, because this is actually a step towards ultimate victory. Now, I have blinders. I can only see up to that, just up to a little vision. I can see up to my nose. I can't see what the divine's plan is. So I accept the defeat. I accept the failure today as God's gift to me, that finally it is going to lead me towards success. And then we realize that even grief and pain become perverse forms of pleasure. Even grief and pain become perverse forms. But wait on. Don't be in a hurry. Be kind to yourself. Be gentle to yourself. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself time to grow into this state. It isn't easy to reach this state, and we must be kind to ourselves. This stage happens only when the human being has given up his subjection to the mind, and conquered his mind, and realizes that his true Anandamaya self is in every part of his body, every part of his vital being, the prana, the mind, every part of my being is Anandamaya. To reach that stage, we have to give ourselves some time. We must be patient and kind to ourselves. And we must be in a state of submission to the divine. And that stage too will come when all will become Patijana. When all, not the next, please keep to the old. Yeah. Then we will come to the stage where we will realize that I am Anandamaya. Then all this world will be experienced like a breath of Ananda. And there will be no need of any effort at all. The effort that we had to do of endurance, titiksha, the effort of becoming indifferent to people, all that effort will be gone. There is no need of effort. By this practice of namaskar to God, we arrive eventually at an entire elimination of grief, pain. We get free from grief and pain. We get free from all the dualities of life. We get rid of fear, insecurity, and suffering. It is our insecurities that make us what we are. But when my entire security is in the hands of God, why should I be dependent on anybody? Who is going to make me secure? My security lies in His hands. What do I have to look at people for security? And then the fear, the depression, the grief, all this actually flies away. We may have to, again I repeat, we may have to begin with endurance or titiksha. We may grow into indifference or udasinata, but it is this Ananda that will finally fulfill our ascent to samatha or equanimity. It is in this condition that living life will become effortless. We will see idam mangalam, this is mangala, etat mangalam, that is mangala, sarvam mangalam, everything is mangalam. We will be able to see that everything is in the sea of delight. Etat should have an halant, but we could not bring it. So, pardon the spelling mistake of etat. The second ter should have had a halant. Then you start living in the sea of delight, where you lose nothing, you gain nothing. Everything that happens to you gives you delight and gives you equal delight. If somebody talks nicely to you, you are in delight. If somebody doesn't talk to you, you are in delight. If somebody gives you something, you are in delight. If somebody doesn't give you anything, you are in delight. You don't have to make an effort of keeping some kind of emotion outside your being. See, in titiksha or endurance, we have to endure the pain or the cruelty or the difficult situations. But in this stage, when we see everything as Mangalam, then we do not have to make any effort. Whatever happens, you are constantly in a state of delight. You can't even call it a state of indifference. The state of indifference also has been transcended. You've gone beyond the state of udasinata or indifference. The word detachment looks so petty. You are so attached to the divine, so much in love with him. There is detachment. It is such a huge love for the divine, a huge ananda, and everything that happens is ananda. Even the idea of detachment, the idea of indifference is washed out. And yet you have a pure passive equanimity. A true state of equanimity is a state of prasada, where everything that is coming to me is a prasada from the divine. It is not a state of dryness. It is not devoid of smile. It is not devoid of kindness. This state is not devoid of grace. It is full of kindness, full of gentleness, gentler than a flower. When we are in the state of prasada consciousness, where all situations that come upon me are accepted by me like a prasada from the divine, then we experience delight constantly. Then we experience real delight. Then all the creatures of the world, for all the creatures of the world, for all circumstances, for everything, the same emotion flows out of us. The way we care for our family members, we care for the people who serve us, we care for the person on the road. For everybody, the same love is flowing out. There is no partiality. There is only love. Love for all, because the divine is in all. And this brings us to understanding the next type of equanimity, which is active equanimity. Is everybody clear up till now?
I have a question, Anjali. Yeah, when we were talking about indifference, you said there are two problems. Either you become very proud of it, or you just think that I really don't care. So how do you overcome them?
You overcome that by going to you either become very cruel. In indifference, you either become very cruel. I've become indifferent.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter usko kya ho raha hai. I become indifferent. She doesn't love me, so I'm indifferent to her. So that is cruelty.
Yeah.
And the second thing is pride.
Pride.
That हमारे अंदर pride हो गया, हमको तो कोई फर्क ही नहीं पड़ता है. So these are the two things. How do you get over these two pits? Is by going to the third stage of passive equanimity, which is
surrender.
Nati. Where you realize that yes, all this that is happening, every circumstance that is happening in my life is actually a prasada from God. So I have to be in love with anybody and everybody, and I have to accept all circumstances as a divine gift. And I have to be the same. God is as sweet and nice to the killer as he is to the saint. He does not do any partiality. And we have to become in that nature. Our nature has to be the same. The nature of love, right?
Yeah.
So to get over it, we have to go to the third stage, which is submission of the soul to the will of God. Is it clear up till now to everybody?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions at this stage? No? Okay. So should we proceed?
Yeah.
All right. Suresh, you can show us the slide. Active equanimity. Greater than the experience of passive equanimity is the action of equanimity. Now, it is beautiful, no doubt, to have an equal perception and vision for all circumstances in my life. That I'm able to see the divine's hand in all that is happening, in every circumstance of my life. But greater than experiencing this is the action of equanimity, in which the action that flows out from me is full of joy and love for divine in all. So there should not be only passive equanimity in me, but the real action of equanimity should flow from me, in which you distribute delight to every individual around you in the right measure, without any partiality for anybody. Why? Because you are basically bathing in constant delight of the divine. Therefore, whether you give this much or that much in the right measure, when you give it in the right measure, it makes no difference to you. The state of active equanimity is when your action is the action for distribution of delight that you are experiencing inwards. This is the action of equanimity that Sri Krishna wanted Arjuna to reach. If you remember the Gita and you see the Gita, how Arjuna was behaving in the first chapter when he was just not ready to fight, because he kept saying, I will incur sin, and this will happen and that will happen, and whether he wins but Sri Krishna said that this is not the Arjuna that I want to see. I want to see an Arjuna who is in a state of equanimity. And whether he kills Bhishma, who is his own great-grandfather, whether he wins the battle, whether he enjoys the kingdom, or whether he gets killed or loses the battle, should make no difference at all to Arjuna's consciousness. In that consciousness, Arjuna would give to Bhishma what is to be given to him by an action which seemed to be sanguinary. It was ghoram karma in Arjuna's words. He said, why are you putting me into this ghoram karma? But once Arjun reached the 11th chapter, Vishwarupa Darshana, where he saw the delight of the divine, he saw the power of the divine, he saw the action of the divine, he saw that everywhere, even this battle, everywhere there is only Purushottama. When he saw that, slowly his whole consciousness reached the state of equanimity, because when you are seeing God everywhere, in every circumstance, there is no other way you will change. And when he reached the consciousness of equanimity, Bhishma himself came and told him how he can be killed. So, once Arjuna perceived in the 11th chapter, Vishwarup Darshan, that delight of the divine, the action of the divine, the power of the divine, he reached that consciousness of equanimity. And then Bhishma came to himself and told him the method by which he can be killed. Because now Arjuna was seated in that passive state of equanimity, ready to let active equanimity flow out from his actions. In the highest state of equanimity, the right action or rhythm flows from us, because now we have become pure instruments of the divine will. When we are seated in that state of equanimity, then what proceeds from us is just and right. Rhythm is the word which is used by the Veda for the right action. But if there is even a little bit of disturbance in the mind, you must be perfectly sure that there should be no disturbance or defect in my state of equilibrium, in my state of equanimity or samta. If there's even a little bit of disturbance, there will be a difficulty, there will be a problem. Why? Because the mind of man is very complex. Even when we have fixed ourselves in indifference, or we have fixed ourselves in nati, there may be revolts. Revolts from the inner part of our being. There may be revolts from the vital being, from our prana. He says, I tried very hard. I can't be equal to him. Look at the way he behaves with me, and then there is a revolt. And all the work that is done starts crumbling. So there can be uneasiness in other parts of our being. Our buddhi, our mind, our heart, our nerves, our prana, because that is where the biggest problem is. The very cells of our body, all must be subjected to the law of samatha. All of our, the entire being, carefully we have to see buddhi, mind, prana, or the vital, the nerves of our body, the very cells of our body, everywhere samatha should have descended and merged into the very cells of our body. So equanimity should have been settled in our body. Then we will reach the active equanimity, where the right action or rhythm will proceed from us. And then we will become pure instruments of the divine will, when active equanimity is settled in our being. Now we are talking of the 3 stages that will happen to us once active equanimity is settled in our being. Then we will experience Shanti, and then we will experience Sukha, and then we will experience Hasya. Shanti, Sukha, and Hasya. Everybody is with me? Should I continue? Okay, next slide. See, the culmination of the settling of equanimity in our being is that we will be in a constant state of Shanti, constant state of calm, Sukha or divine joy, and Hasya or an internal state of gladness. First thing that will come to us after equanimity has settled in our being is Shanti. Only when equanimity is accomplished can Shanti be perfect in our system. Our Shanti, depending on whether we are following the path of Udasinata or we are following the path of Nati. If we are following the path of Udasinata, then also there will be Shanti, but that Shanti will be a vast, passive calm. It may lead to a tendency of inaction. Because in Udasinata, what happens? You become indifferent. I don't care. So you stop doing anything. But you can be in a state of calm, but you can become inactive. When we are following, our Shanti has come to us and is experienced to us and is experienced by us as a vast, joyous calm. If we are living in the consciousness of Nati, if we are living in the consciousness of Nati, then the activity too will continue to proceed from us. But activity which has its basis, as its basis, it has joy. Joy and activity. In the state of Nati, when we get the Shanti, that Shanti will not be a calm of inactivity. It will become a calm of joyous action. There will be action and more action. Does the divine ever rest? Does God ever rest? Does God ever become inactive? Not even for a split moment. So, that kind of activity will flow from us if we are following the path of Nati or submission to the divine. So, when equanimity has settled in our being, passive equanimity has settled in our being, then what will come to us? Then we will experience Shanti, Sukha, and Hasya. When Samatha and Shanti both are fulfilled in our being, then we will experience Sukham. Now, what is Sukham truly? Sukh hota kya hai? किस सुख की हम आकांक्षा करते हैं? Sukh is the complete relief from any sort of sorrow, any sort of dukh, any sort of grief, vishada, nothing. When there is real sukh which has come to us after we have accomplished samatha in our being and Shanti has settled in our being, then we will experience a different kind of sukh. There is one sukh which comes and then brings with it dukh. And then the dukh comes and brings with it sukh. And there is always a kind of a pendulum movement. But once samatha has settled into our being. And because of Samata, Shanti has settled into our being. Then we will be given that kind of sukha, that where there is no touch of sorrow, the tendency of depression, weariness, all that will be gone in that sattvic ease. That kind of sukham will be experienced by us. Everybody's clear? So there is first samatha, which brings with it shanti. When shanti has been established in our being, then sukham comes. And once sukham is settled in our being, then we experience hasyam. Hasyam is an active internal state of cheerfulness. When we experience sukha actively, not just theoretically, when we experience sukha actively, not just theoretically, it leads to hasyam. Now, what is hasyam? Hasyam is a state of gladness, a state of an inner state of cheerfulness. It is internally when one is full of cheer, full of gladness, which no adverse experience, mental pain or physical pain can dilute or trouble it. It is an internal cheerfulness, a state of ananda, a state of cheerfulness, gladness, joy, which is an inner joy, which is always there, which cannot be disturbed, which cannot be diluted by any trouble, by any outer or inner trouble. When the state of hasya has been perfected in our being, then we can safely say that this is God's stamp and seal on the samatha that has been established in our being. And that stamp and seal is of that samatha which is His prasada only. It is not by my effort that we have reached there. It is yours, O Divine. That too is thine. Idam na mama, idam na mama, idam na mama. Then etat mangalam. Right? In the state of hasya, in our internal being, we will be experiencing the smile of Krishna constantly playing cheerfully in the garden of the world. Can you just imagine? Let's for just 30 seconds see His beautiful, benign, cheerful, glad smile inside our being, as if our soul is smiling. मन ही नहीं करता उसमें से निकलने का. So, this in short is what pursuing equanimity or samatha consciously in our life will eventually lead us to. It will eventually lead us to shanti, sukham, hasyam. It may not be in the short term. It will be a long-term investment. When we go on being equanimous in our life, going on trying to be equanimous, short-term pleasures nahi milenge, instant pleasure, instant gratification nahi milega. But long-term, it's an investment for a long period. Then all will be experienced as the play of the divine. Then we will need to endure what? What do we need to become indifferent to? All will become a living divine, a play of the divine. All will become a play of the divine, and a play in which we will participate with an inner state of settled samatva, shanti, sukham, and hasyam. 1 minute. What happened? So both indifference and detachment are transcended, and we come to a new condition. You can switch off the slides. both indifference and detachment are transcended, and you are in a new condition of a true equanimity, in which samatvam becomes your natural state of being, when the equanimity is the ideal equanimity of our being. So this was in brief the different stages of reaching finally the stage of samatvam or equanimity. And then you may ask questions if you have any queries. We can do some discussions. But first, let us for 30 seconds just meditate on what we have learned and absorb and assimilate it. If there are any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask. I hope it was all very clear.
It was very clear, Anjali. And the painting that you were showing alongside was so beautiful.
Real. That's what I was usme maza itna aa raha tha, and then you're saying it all merged.
Yeah. Well, who has done those paintings?
Oh, I only picked them all up from the net. I wish I was capable of painting as well.
I've clicked a few pictures also of the...
Samatvam Yog Uchyate.
We had that slide in the first. That slide was the beginning of my presentation. Then it came as the last of the presentation. Then I said, जब कृष्ण को डाल दिया तो फिर उस slide की क्या जरूरत है? तो हम लोगों ने मोना और हमने अब भी उसको हटाया. आज 1.5 घंटे पहले उसको हटाया कि अब तो कृष्ण खुद आ गए, हास्यम की स्थिति तक ले गए, तो अब क्या, तो उसको फिर हम लोगों ने रिमूव कर दिया. But in the Gita, he says, Krishna says that one of the definitions of yoga is samatvam yoga uchyate. Yeah.
Anjali, I have a question.
Yeah, yes, Renu.
Renu, yeah. I really do not see any difference between Sukham and Hasyam. Isn't it all the same? It's an inner joy, because Hasyam, you said it was internal state of inner joy.
So, Sukham is when you do not experience any sort of sorrow from outside. You do not experience any sort of sorrow from outside. There is no grief that you can, whatever experience happens from outside, it is all like Sukha, because you see the touch of God in it. And Hasyam is an internal, the inner being of yours is the divine smiling. You are in a state of cheerfulness. You see people who are always smiling.
Yeah.
Because there is that inner cheer, there is that inner gladness, there is that inner joy that they're experiencing from inside. So I think that is the difference. And this Sapta Chatushtaya that Sri Aurobindo has written, Krishna came directly to him and dictated it. So these stages of passive equanimity and the stages of active equanimity are what Sri Krishna has given directly to Sri Aurobindo. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Is this a book by itself, the Sapta Chatushtaya? I'm hearing this name for the first time.
I think it comes in the records of yoga. There are 2 books which Sri Aurobindo had said not to be published, in which he used to write about his actual experiences of yoga, like if there was some levitation that is happening, his body is rising, all his experience. It's a difficult book to even understand. So,
I had a question.
Yeah, who's that?
Udasinta.
Ani, who's speaking?
Archana.
Ajiji,
Udasinta, I thought was that when you are not bothered about your senses and you become indifferent to your senses. I thought that was Udasinta.
Udasinta is when you become indifferent. Now, it is not only to your senses. You become udasin to your thoughts. My thought is saying that so-and-so is very mean to me. And then you become indifferent to your thought. You say, I'm going to rise beyond. This thought that he is mean to me is a thought in the mind. But I am not the thought. So I am going to rise above that thought. Suppose there is pain in the body. And then I say that this pain is in the body. I am not feeling the pain. And one rises above that. So that is indifference. Udasinata. Any other question, friends? Somebody saying something?
Yeah, this is Yogesh. I had a question.
Yeah, Yogesh.
It was
We
very
wait for your
clear.
question.
Yeah, it was very clear till passive equanimity.
Equanimity.
It's because of engaging just the way we did, in all our Upanishad discussions of Isha. It always talks about putting the center. Our whole engagement is that we are the center. But when you keep on bringing him into every activity, physical, mental, emotional, and you can see his play and you have prasad buddhi. Till that point, very clear. Now the moment you're, and as you said, you stabilize in that.
Yeah.
Now you also are acting, you're also doing action. And this concept is that, look, action is being done through you by him, right? When you come to passive equanimity, does that realization happen that the actions being engaged by the individual are also him?
You realize that, but in active equanimity, the action also proceeds. The divine's will starts flowing through you sometimes. And action, you don't become passive. In indifference, one can become passive. But once you reach the stage of nati, submission to the will of God, then action starts flowing from you. But the right action means rhythm. That action which the divine would like should flow out from you. That action starts flowing out from you. And in active equanimity, you start seeing the divine with Preeti. You see the divine in everything. Everywhere you see the divine. In every circumstance you see the divine. It says Ratah Preetir Anandah. You feel rasa in everything. In the most, even in Corona, you are seeing rasa. You are seeing, so we had become, look at how we had become with the earth. We had stopped caring for Mother Earth. And with Corona, this rasa, you see, now we are all waking up. You start experiencing rasa and preeti. Preeti is love for everything that is happening in this world.
See,
right?
As I said, my only question here is that every other engagement is the other, right? We all understand ourselves, and then everything coming to me is coming from him. And then in the active one, you're evolving, saying that this consideration of me also is actually you, and therefore the action is flowing, but it is you. Do you see the duality here? There was always an identity that you held as yourself, but when you go into active, you're actually seeing that even what you thought yourself being yourself is actually him and engaging out.
Yes, and very good. That's very beautifully said, that you start experiencing the Shakti flowing through you. And when that starts happening, what happens to you? Shanti starts, a real calm, but not a passive calm, but an active calm, a calm where actual action is flowing out of you. That kind of a Shanti settles inside you. An active Shanti, where there is actual movement, there's activity, but coming out of Shanti. And after that Shanti has settled in you, you start experiencing Sukha. You start experiencing joy. You start experiencing that joy which does not allow anything to be seen as Dukha. Nothing leads you to Vishada or grief. No experience can give you the touch of sorrow or grief. That kind of Sukha actually settles. First, Shanti settles inside you. Then once Shanti has settled and has become one, has assimilated in your being, then Sukha starts descending into you. And when Sukha has descended and assimilated in your being, then Hasya, you live in a state of constant cheerfulness. So these are the three stages of what happens to you when passive equanimity of the third stage has actually been absorbed in you.
Right. Makes sense. Thanks.
Yes, thank you. Any other question from anybody? But it was all very clear.
tangential question, but I wanted to ask you what prompted you to pick up this topic, Abhi, suddenly?
I was preparing this for the spiritual retreat
Ah,
for my school students. We are having a 5-day spiritual retreat on Zoom.
Hmm.
So this was one of my topics for the students.
really very nice talk. Really nice.
Already some 68 students have registered and more are filling in. So I had prepared this, so I thought I should share it with my Quest group.
It was really a nice session.
Oh, I'm so happy.
Thank God for that you could share.
Can you share some more experiences of Sri Aurobindo or Mother in equanimity? I mean, whatever they have ever expressed or written.
Well, Sri Aurobindo, towards the last few days of his, he went through some real problems of health. I mean, they were huge. I didn't speak about it because this was prepared for students and I cut off that portion. But actually, equanimity reaches a point where even the physical pain is not experienced as pain anymore. It is experienced as pleasure. It is, again, those 3 E's: endurance, equanimity, ecstasy, where actually he was experiencing ecstasy. You never heard him scream in pain or even say that he had pain. And he went through really difficult situation. And he was writing Savitri through that. Another experience I can tell is of Kirit uncle. He had had a stroke of the brain in the cerebellum. And he was in the ICU. And he had been working in Gujarat on the Teachers Training Institute and the Children's University. And my daughter Chitwan was there to see him. She had come to Gandhinagar to see him. I was there looking after him. And he told Chitwan to get paper and a pen. And through that brain stroke, the 3rd or 4th day of his stroke, he dictated reams of paper to her. It was just flowing from him. When Sri Aurobindo was in the jail, red ants, it was a complete isolation, solitary confinement. The room was barely 7 feet by maybe 4 feet or something. And there were red ants. And those red ants would bite and it would sting. But he said, I would feel, I could experience actual pleasure. I could actually experience ecstasy as if my Lord is biting me. So these are some of the experiences. I have seen Kirit uncle through so many situations when he was ICPR chairperson, when he was a chairperson of Auroville. He has gone through very difficult situations. But I have never seen a single frown on his forehead, ever, even once. He's having to bear any pain. There was always sukha, there was always shanti, and there was always hasyam. There was an inner cheerfulness always. So that means equanimity had settled in his being long back.